A dull, throbbing pain spread through his body, radiating from his lower abdomen. The last thing he remembered was a stupid bet, an alien gravity sport, and a badly timed jump that sent him crotch first into an energy field. Now, he was on a cold, sterile examination table, surrounded by strange blinking lights and unfamiliar scents. A soft hum vibrated through the walls. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something floral. His head was foggy, but the moment he shifted, pain shot up his spine. "Ah, you are awake." The voice was deep, smooth, and unmistakably feminine. A tall, purple-skinned alien woman loomed over him, her golden eyes scanning a translucent data pad. She had the kind of figure that made it hard to focus on the pain. Or anything else. "You suffered a blunt force impact to your lower torso. Bruising, swelling, but the real concern." She lowered the pad and gave him a look, her brow ridges furrowing. "There is a foreign object protruding from your body. I suspect internal hemorrhaging." He blinked. "Foreign object?" She gestured at the blanket covering his lower half. "Yes. You have something growing between your legs." "Oh, hell." He propped himself up on his elbows, wincing. "That's not, it's not a foreign object." Her eyes flickered with suspicion. "Are you telling me this is a normal human condition?" A long pause. "Yes." Her expression didn't change. If anything, she looked more alarmed. "I see. So it is a biological defense mechanism?" "What?" "No." He groaned, running a hand down his face. "It's not a weapon." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why did it enlarge when I examined it?" "Oh, for the love of—" He swallowed hard. "Because look, it's not conscious. It's not a battle stance. It just does that sometimes." She glanced at her data pad, scrolling rapidly. "There is no documentation of such a function in human anatomy reports." "Yeah, because no one thought they'd need to explain it in an intergalactic medical file." Her lips pressed together, and for a brief moment, she looked concerned. Then, her professional demeanor returned. "Very well. I will need to inspect it more closely." He tensed. "I'd really rather you didn't." She already had a pair of sterile gloves on. "If it is a foreign growth, it could be dangerous." "It's not." Her gloved fingers hovered above the blanket. "And you are sure this is not an Earthling explosive organ?" "What the fuck, N.O.?" She hesitated. Her fingers twitched. "Then can I touch it?" He choked. "What?" "For medical purposes, of course. If it is part of your anatomy, I must verify its density, structure, and possible mobility." "Oh my God!" He covered his face with his hands. "This is not happening." She ignored his distress and tapped at her pad. "I will also need to scan its heat signatures. It appears to be warmer than the rest of your body." "Yeah, no shit." Her fingers brushed against the blanket, and he nearly jumped off the table. "All right, stop." She blinked. "I have not yet begun." "Exactly. And let's keep it that way." He exhaled sharply, gripping the edges of the examination table. "Look, nurse, NY Arcala," she supplied. "Right. NY Arcala. I appreciate your commitment to medical science, but I promise that thing is supposed to be there. It's not a growth. It's not a weapon. And it is definitely not something you need to neutralize." She tilted her head, skepticism all over her face. "But it activated when I touched your thigh." "Jesus Christ." "It's not activation," he muttered, dragging a hand down his face. "So it is a voluntary function?" "Not exactly." "Then it is an autonomous function?" "Not exactly." She folded her arms. "Then what is it?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, then sighed. "It's complicated." Her eyes lit up with intrigue. Fascinating. Before he could stop her, she reached for her communicator. I will alert security for further study. His stomach dropped. Wait, what? I must ensure you are not concealing a dangerous biological anomaly. If there is a chance this is an undiscovered Earthling weapon, the medical board will need to. Oh, come on! A soft chime filled the room. Security override activated, an automated voice announced. Ah, that was fast. He barely had time to process before the doors slid open, and 6 heavily armed alien guards stormed in, their rifles aimed directly at his groin. His hand shot up. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't shoot! The lead guard's eyes narrowed. Human, you are in possession of an unauthorized biological entity. Surrender it immediately. Surrender what? The protrusion. It's attached to me. And Wairakala turned to the commander, professional as ever. I have confirmed that it is active. The commander's grip on her weapon tightened. Then it's armed? No, you idiots. It's not armed, it's not dangerous, and it's not a biological warhead. It's just a dick. Silence. A long, long silence. And Wairakala frowned. A dick? Yes. A dick. A penis. A reproductive organ. That's what it is. That's all it is. The room remained dead quiet. Then, the commander lowered her rifle just slightly. You mean to say, this is normal? Yes. For all humans? Yes. And it activates on its own? He ran a hand through his hair. Technically, yeah. The guards exchanged looks. The tension eased. Then, a younger soldier leaned toward his comrade and whispered, I kind of want one. He let out a long, exhausted groan. And Wairakala, unfazed by the entire ordeal, simply adjusted her gloves and turned back to him. Fascinating. If it is a reproductive organ, then surely there are proper medical protocols for testing its function. He froze. The commander raised a brow. Yes. The human must demonstrate that it is not a weapon. Oh, hell no. Before he could argue, and Wairakala pressed her communicator again. Summon the medical board. His jaw dropped. You cannot be serious. I am always serious about science. His hands twitched. He stared at the ceiling. He contemplated his life choices. This was not how he thought his day would go. A heavy silence hung in the room, broken only by the occasional shifting of boots and the faint hum of medical scanners. He was still lying on the damn table, blanket barely covering his dignity, while 6 heavily armed alien guards stood around him, weapons lowered but not holstered. The words medical board echoed in his skull like an execution sentence. You don't actually need a board to examine my junk, he groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. And Wairakala, unfazed, tapped at her data pad. Standard protocol for unidentified biological anomalies. It's not unidentified. It's a penis. It's literally one of the most studied organs in human anatomy. She arched a brow. Then surely it will be no trouble to verify its function. His stomach twisted. I don't like how you phrased that. The door hissed open again, and in walked 3 more aliens in pristine white uniforms, medical officers, their eyes sharp with clinical curiosity. Oh, great, he muttered. More people to gawk at my balls. One of them, a lanky blue-skinned male with a severe expression, flipped open a holographic clipboard. I am Dr. Twin. I understand we are dealing with a potential Earthling biological adaptation. No, we are not dealing with anything, because there's nothing to deal with. Dr. Twin glanced at Wairakala, who nodded. The organ appears to activate under stimuli. However, I have not yet confirmed its purpose. He threw his hands up. It's for sex. The entire room went quiet. A younger female officer blinked. It attacks? His head hit the pillow. Oh my God! Dr. Twin frowned. Nurse, please elaborate. And Wyarkala clasped her hands behind her back. Upon light contact, the organ became engorged, displaying signs of increased blood flow and heat signature variants. The human claims this is normal. Dr. Twin hummed. Fascinating. And you are certain it is not a defensive structure? He gritted his teeth. Buddy, if human dicks were weapons, do you really think we'd be losing so many wars? Dr. Twin looked unconvinced. Many species have concealed weaponry. It would not be the first time an Earthling displayed hidden biological warfare capabilities. He stared at the ceiling, praying for death. Yeah, well, this one just makes more humans, not kill them. The female officer tilted her head. It reproduces? And Wyarkala nodded. That is what he claims. Dr. Twin scribbled something down. Then it is not a threat? No. A pause. Then the doctor adjusted his glasses. Then we must verify its reproductive capability. He shot up. No, the hell you don't. Dr. Twin frowned. Medical ethics demand a full analysis. I am not jerking off for science. The room fell into stunned silence once again, and Wyarkala furrowed her brow. Jerk off? The female officer leaned closer to her colleague and whispered. It sounds like an Earthling combat maneuver. The commander frowned. Perhaps a battle chant. He slammed his head back down. I hate all of you. Dr. Twin cleared his throat. Perhaps a live demonstration would be more illuminating. His eyes snapped open. Excuse me? And Wyarkala lifted her data pad. A mating display would be the most efficient way to confirm its function. His stomach did a backflip. I am not mating for a damn science experiment. The commander crossed her arms. The human refuses cooperation. This may require coercion. He turned to her, horrified. You are not gonna torture me into proving I can get it up. The female officer looked thoughtful. Perhaps we simply need the proper stimulus. His face burned. No. No stimulus. No tests. No experiments. I am not some intergalactic breeding stud for your weird alien science. Dr. Twin scrolled through his notes. In Wyarkala, are there known human stimuli that induce reproductive behavior? She pursed her lips. Earthlings are known to engage in procreative rituals involving verbal exchanges and physical contact. The female officer nodded. I will retrieve a human female specimen for compatibility testing. He nearly had a stroke. No, you will not. Dr. Twin sighed. We are at an impasse. And Wyarkala frowned, then turned to him. Would I suffice? His brain short-circuited. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The female officer tilted her head. That could work. Direct interaction. The commander nodded. Proceed. Wait! He threw his hands up. Are you seriously telling me that to get out of here, I have to prove that my dick works on her? And Wyarkala folded her arms. If you insist it is not a weapon, then what harm is there in demonstration? His pulse skyrocketed. The entire room was looking at him, waiting. He sucked in a slow breath. All right. Fine. You want to see what it does? You want to confirm its function? Then let me explain it to you. He took another breath, steadying himself. 1. It is not a conscious entity. It does not activate on its own. It responds to stimuli, physical, mental, emotional. It's not an on-off switch, and it sure as hell isn't a goddamn weapon. The officers took notes, nodding along. 2. It's used for reproduction, yes, but also for pleasure. Humans have sex for bonding, connection, and fun. It's not just about making more of us. The female officer's eyes widened. Recreational use? And Wyarkala tapped her chin. Intriguing. Dr. Twin hummed. And this function, how does it begin? He stared at them. They stared back. He groaned. You want a clinical breakdown? And Wyarkala nodded. Yes. He clenched his jaw. Fine. Step 1. Attraction. If we like someone, our body reacts. Chemicals, hormones, all that. And Wyarkala made a note. So I am insufficient. His brain short-circuited again. That's not what I said. She ignored him. Step 2. He took a deep breath. Touch. Kissing. Foreplay. Building desire. The female officer's brow rose. Elaborate. He stared at them, then let out a hollow laugh. Nope. I'm done. Not explaining foreplay to a room of aliens. Dr. Twin sighed. We will require additional research. The commander nodded. Agreed. She turned to him. Human, you are free to go. He blinked. Wait, what? And Wyarkala set her pad down. You have sufficiently demonstrated that your reproductive organ is neither a weapon nor an immediate threat. He gaped at her. That's it? You're letting me go? The commander nodded. Correct. He exhaled, relief washing over him. Oh, thank God. As he sat up, the female officer jotted something down. However, given the lack of recorded human mating behaviors, we will require long-term study. His relief vanished, and Wyarkala smiled. You will report back for a follow-up examination. I will personally oversee your progress. His stomach dropped. Oh, she added, eyes gleaming. And I expect full demonstrations next time. He really needed to stop getting injured on alien planets. The relief of being released barely lasted 5 minutes. He had just finished pulling his pants on when Wyarkala walked beside him, matching his pace with infuriating ease. You didn't answer my question, she said smoothly. He rubbed his face. Which one? She tilted her head. Would I be a sufficient mating partner? His steps faltered. You're still on that? Her brow furrowed. It is a legitimate inquiry. You stated that human attraction is biological and psychological. If my presence did not induce arousal, then I must assume I lack qualities you find desirable. He almost tripped over his own feet. Jesus Christ, you're blunt. I am thorough. He exhaled. Look, it's not that you're unattractive, okay? You're just different. She nodded. So you do find me attractive? That's not what I said. She made a thoughtful noise. Fascinating. Your body language contradicts your words. He groaned. Oh my God. A few passing medics glanced at them, obviously trying to eavesdrop. He shot them a glare, and they quickly looked away. Why is this so important to you? He asked, lowering his voice. And Wyarkala adjusted her gloves. It is my duty as a medical professional to understand interspecies biology. That's bullshit. She smirked. And I'm curious. He groaned again. Yeah, I noticed. They reached the hallway's end, and he paused by the exit. Look, I don't know what you expect, but I'm not some kind of science project. She tilted her head. I do not require a project. I require data. He pinched the bridge of his nose. You're really bad at flirting. She arched a brow. Flirting? I am conducting research. Uh-huh. And I'm the goddamn Pope. Her eyes flickered over him. You do not meet the requirements for human clergy. He rolled his eyes. It was sarcasm. She nodded. I see. You deflect when uncomfortable. He sighed. I deflect when I'm being interrogated about my junk for the second time in an hour. She hummed. Understandable. A moment of silence passed. He could feel her watching him. Finally, he shook his head. You're not gonna let this go, are you? She smiled. No. He rubbed his temples. Fine. Fine. You want to study human sexuality? Then you gotta start with the basics. She perked up. Go on. He sighed. First off, attraction isn't just about looks. It's about chemistry, connection, banter. She nodded. I understand. We are engaging in verbal sparring to establish compatibility. He blinked. Wait, are you flirting? She smirked. You said I was bad at it. I am adjusting my approach. His brain stalled. He quickly recovered. Okay, see, that was good. You're learning. She nodded, pleased. Then continue. He exhaled. Right. So humans also like touch. It builds intimacy. It's not just about the end goal, it's about the process. She stepped closer. Like this? He stiffened as her fingers grazed his wrist. Her skin was cool, smooth. His pulse spiked. She tilted her head. Your heart rate has increased. He swallowed. Yeah, no shit. She studied his face. Then it is working. He huffed a laugh. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She smirked. It is educational. He shook his head, grinning despite himself. You're ridiculous. She merely stepped back, hands clasped. I will require further lessons. He narrowed his eyes. You're just saying that to mess with me now. Perhaps. He snorted. All right, fine. You want to learn about human intimacy? Let's make a deal. She raised a brow. A deal? He crossed his arms. You lay off the clinical talk. No more data collection bullshit. You learn naturally. She considered this. And in return? He smirked. I show you what real flirting looks like. She tapped her chin. Acceptable terms. He chuckled. You're something else, nurse. She gave him a rare, genuine smile. I do my best. As they exited, he had a sinking feeling this study was going to get a whole lot more complicated. 3 days later, he found himself in the medical wing again, this time for a routine checkup. Nwayarkala had been oddly reserved since their last conversation. No invasive questions, no smug smirks, just professional detachment. He wasn't sure if he preferred that or the relentless curiosity. As he sat on the examination table, she scanned him in silence. The tension was suffocating. So, he said, stretching the word out, are we just gonna pretend you didn't interrogate me about human attraction? Her fingers paused midair. I have reviewed my approach. He raised a brow. And? She set the scanner down. I may have been excessively direct. He smirked. You don't say. She exhaled, looking at him properly. I do not wish to make you uncomfortable. He studied her expression, genuine for once. Not just amused curiosity, not clinical detachment. He softened. Hey, I wasn't uncomfortable. Just caught off guard. She tilted her head. Then I should continue my research? He chuckled. You really don't quit, huh? I am thorough. He shook his head, biting back a grin. Fine. Go ahead. What do you want to know? She hesitated, then asked. When humans form relationships, how do you determine long-term compatibility? He blinked. That's actually a good question. She crossed her arms. I do not ask bad questions. He snorted. Okay, fair. Well, it's different for everyone. Some people look for shared interests. Some look for emotional support. Some just want a good time. Her brow furrowed. And you? He scratched the back of his neck. I guess I want someone who gets me, you know? Someone I can actually talk to without pretending to be something I'm not. She watched him carefully. You do not pretend with me. He huffed a laugh. Yeah, because you don't give me the chance to. She tapped her fingers against the table. That is beneficial for compatibility. He blinked. Wait. Are you trying to say we are compatible? She met his gaze evenly. The evidence suggests so. His brain short-circuited. You can't just say that. She tilted her head. It is an observation. He rubbed his face. Jesus Christ, you're impossible. She stepped closer, peering at him curiously. You are flustered. He scoffed. No shit. She hummed. Interesting. He groaned. You like messing with me, don't you? She smirked. It is engaging. He exhaled. You're insane. She merely lifted a brow. And yet, you enjoy my company. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Annoyingly, she wasn't wrong. He sighed. I'm gonna regret this. She arched a brow. Regret what? He leaned in slightly. If you really want to understand human relationships, there's only one way to do it. She observed him carefully. Go on. He smirked. You have to go on a date with me. For the first time since meeting her, she was the one caught off guard. He grinned. See? Now you know how it feels. She blinked, recovering quickly. A date is a structured social ritual meant to determine long-term compatibility. Exactly. She considered this. Acceptable. He laughed. You sound so enthusiastic. She smirked. I am intrigued. He stood, stretching. All right, then. It's a date. As he left the room, he could feel her watching him. Somehow, he knew this study was about to get a lot more interesting.